Hello, everybody, and thank you for joining me. This is Ciara from Ciara T Designs, and welcome to week 7 of my 12 weeks of Christmas series. So let's jump right in. So I'm going to create some slimline cards. So for that, you need a cardstock cut down to 7 by 8.5. So you just saw me cut 4 inches off of a standard piece of paper to North America, and then I'm going to score at the 3.5 inch market. But I am also going to cut down a black mat and a piece of watercolor cardstock. Now I thought I would do this in my little trimmer. You're going to see me switch to my rotary trimmer in a minute, just because I can do the long cut, but I can't do the width because I can't see it, right? So obviously here I can cut this down to, it's about 1/4 inch smaller than, it's about 1/8 inch smaller than the base, but I can't check the length that I just trimmed. And then of course this is actually slightly larger than, it's a 9 by 12 piece and it doesn't actually fit. So I'm going to cut it down, but I'm going to bring in my rotary trimmer just so I can check those cuts and then do the longer cut as well so that I know what the length is. Just because you do kind of want them to be, you know, where you're hoping to cut. So here you can see I'm just fixing any of the trims that I did wrong. So my watercolor piece is about 1/4 inch smaller than my base, and my black mat is about 1/8 inch smaller than my base. I say about because it is eyeballed a little bit. Like I'm trying to measure it here, but really I generally end up eyeballing things quite a bit. So keep that in mind. I like the little border, completely up to you as to what you prefer. And then I'm going to score my base. So this is that 8.5 by 7 at the 3.5 inch mark, giving me my base for a slimline card. There are a few different measurements you can do. I have seen slimlines bigger than this. This is just kind of my preferred way to do it, but there's no right or wrong. That, you know, just whatever makes you happy. And I'm going to score on my small board just because, again, it fits better in the camera view. But if you have a 12 by 12, this would be easier because you can go the full length. Now, I recently had a comment about scoring bases, and it's interesting. I don't have a preference, and honestly, 3/4 of the time I forget, you know, what direction it's supposed to be. But some people, you know, they prefer the score bump on the inside or the outside. I don't think it matters. I honestly think it's personal preference. You're going to find people who tell you it does matter. I'm not one of them. I think it's whatever looks better to you. That's what you should go with. So keep that in mind. I don't think there's a right or wrong way to create your base. Maybe one looks more aesthetically pleasing than the other, that kind of thing. But ultimately, you know, as long as you're happy, it really doesn't matter. Especially that, you know, like it's fine. So I am going to tape down the 2 pieces of watercolor cardstock that I've cut with, this is just painter's tape. I actually recently had a really, really kind lady send me some, I think it's like easy tape, and I didn't use it for this project because I needed the tape to be thicker, but I want to use that. So thank you so much, Linda. I greatly appreciate it. I have not had a chance to use it yet, but I will. It's on my radar. It's sitting in front of me, so it will happen, and I really appreciate you going out of your way to do that. That was incredibly kind of you. But for this, I am just going to use some painter's tape, and I'm trying to make the border all the same the whole way around. I don't know if I succeeded. I'm trying to though, so you can kind of see me like gingerly laying down the tape to try to get that similar border all the way around because I want that in the finished piece. So I am going to do the northern light. At least I'm calling them the northern lights. So you can call it, like, maybe it's an aurora borealis. I don't know. I just think it looks cool. But there's, you know, no right or wrong way here. I'm going to use watercolor just because I have been really enjoying using my watercolors lately. But honestly, if you don't have watercolors or this is intimidating, use your inks. You can use reinkers. I've done the Northern Lights several times now just with oxides or distress inks. You know, there's so many ways you can do this. So use whatever works for you. This is just what I'm going to do because I've been playing with my watercolors and having a lot of fun. So I thought it would be fun to kind of try to paint it. As I said, I have done a few different card designs with, you know, oxides. I've done them with reinkers. I've done them with the inks. I've tried a few different ways. So go check those out if you like the Northern Lights. But I just thought it would be really fun to do a fun, vibrant look at these backgrounds. So I have my Mijello Mission Gold watercolor palette here. That's the palette I have, so that's what I use all the time. And for this first one, I'm going to use, I think I used 4 different colors. I have Viridian, Yellow Green, Prussian Blue, and Indigo. My Indigo is very dark. It's the last color you're seeing me add, and it's just to add a little bit of shading into the sky. There's no right or wrong here, though. Of course, like I said, you can, add as you like, take away as you like. And then I was just bringing in a little bit of clean, clear water to kind of try to lighten up the center a little bit. I will add a little gouache later to make that even more obvious. But this is, again, it's just me playing. And you do see me do a full wash of, just plain water on the beginning as well, just to get movement from the paints. Now for my second one, I couldn't resist doing pinks and purples. You guys know, if you've been with me for any length of time, purple is my favorite color. Pink is a very close second. And then we go into like teals and blues. So because of that, I could not resist. Obviously, this is very, it's not necessarily realistic, but I think it looked pretty and, a lot of fun. So, and I enjoyed doing it, which is kind of the whole purpose. So for the colors for this guy, I used bright clear violet, red violet, and then Prussian blue and indigo again. So that's kind of the blue and the darker color you see me add to kind of help it be more night sky-ish. But obviously, as I said, this is very whimsical. It's not meant to be super realistic. It's just me having a lot of fun with my paints, and just adding color and playing and just having fun, which I am a firm believer is the whole part of creating. So keep that in mind, and you could recreate this in any colorway you want to. If pinks and purples are not your thing, perfectly okay. Now I am going to dry the layer after. See here, I'm going to try to lift a little color as well. I didn't have the cleanest water for this stage. I do actually change out my water after every layer just because I want a bit, I think it's easier to work with clean water. But I am going to heat set these with my heat tool because I want the second layer to go on top, not blend. And that, of course, is how watercolors work, right? If you work wet on wet to get more blending, you work, dry, like wet on dry to get more layering. So similar to the oxides really, and the inks. So it's just you work wet on wet to get, blends, and then you work, wet on dry to get layering. So keep that in mind. It wouldn't matter what kind of background you're working with. It just happens to be watercolors in this case. So I'm going to fully dry them both crisp dry, and then I'm going to do the same thing again with the exact same colors. It's really just to create more vibrancy and interest. You could probably leave it here if you were happy with your colors. I wanted them to be a bit more, so there's less water involved here. So that should give me a more consistent color, a little less movement, because I've kind of created the movement I want in my watercolor already. And so I'm going to kind of just bring in all the colors again and just recreate that kind of movement that I have going on. For my brushes, I used a 1-inch flat to lay down the color, and then I used a 12 to actually do these parts, just because I wanted to play with a thicker brush. A lot of the time I go in with a really thin brush and I'm doing a lot of really small detail in the paintings that I'm doing, but this, I just really wanted to, just bust out a thick brush and see what happened. A lot of the watercolor for me now is just kind of playing. I do have a video on Thursday coming, and it's actually a monochromatic watercolor painting that I recently did from the class that I'm taking. If you guys have been with me for any length of time, you know that I've been taking a watercolor class, and I share a video like once a month of the class so you can kind of see the progress and just, come along with me, because sometimes learning things as an adult is really scary, and you kind of get this feeling like we're supposed to be you're supposed to be good at everything as an adult. And if you're not, why are you trying? Like, at least that's the feeling I get sometimes. And so with that, I want to share my, my journey, my progress with painting with you guys, so that if you're, excited to try something and you're a little nervous, you don't feel alone. It's always kind of my goal. I want to inspire. And whether that's trying something new, whether that's creating a card design, whether that's, whatever it needs to be for you, I just want to inspire you to do whatever it needs to be. So that's always kind of my thought there. But yeah, I have a monochromatic painting coming, and I will be honest with you guys, I struggled a little bit. It's in grays. It's like a grayscale, and I like vibrant colors, so it was a bit of a struggle, but I think it turned out really pretty, and you will see that, as I said, on Thursday. So something to kind of look forward to. But you can see that I did just go back through my colors again, and then I added a little bit of water to kind of try to lighten up the center. As I said, I will bring in some white gouache to give it a little bit more. I wish I had thought about doing that here. I didn't until I had already added the trees. So you know, it's one of those things you learn as you go. I'm going to add white splatter because of course this would be in my mind the stars, and the ones that kind of splatter and they're a bit like chunky, I'm like, that looks like a constellation. So I'm okay with it. So you can see in the middle of the purple lights going up, there's like a bit of a line. I'm like, that's cool. It's a constellation. So I was happy with it. Again, this is just me having a play and having a lot of fun with my watercolors. So there's no right or wrong here. It might not be to your taste, and that's perfectly okay, you know, but I had a lot of fun. So I brought back in my Tim Holtz Forest Shadow dies. This is the die set you guys saw me use a few weeks ago to create those really pretty glitter trees. So this is that same die set. I'm going to use both this time. On that one, I only used, I think, these trees right here, actually. And you can see Az is walking through the screen there. That's one of my kittens. He's really helping out. So I'm going to use both sets of trees for this, and I'm going to cut them out of black cardstock. We're going to use a white gel pen to add some highlights. I have a struggle with flat things, like flat colored things. So here you can see that they're very black. There's no highlighting. There's no anything to them. And you could 100% leave them like that. But I'm not going to because I find them too flat for my liking. And I know that sounds silly, but shadows and highlights make things feel more, you know, textured, more, I don't know the right word for that, but they just make them feel more realistic, even though they're not, you know, this is a card, so obviously they're not 3D or anything. But you're going to see me add white highlights as we get going because they look a little too flat to me, and I'll show you the difference so you can kind of see why I end up doing that, so you can decide if it's something you would like to do or not. Now with this larger set of trees, I actually have it cutting off of the cardstock because I know my slimline's only 3.5 inches at most. You know, that's the base, that's not the 2 top layers. So with that, I don't need the full base of this because I'm going to cut it off. So I did just kind of cut off the edge of my cardstock so that I didn't have, you know, because I'm going to trim it anyway. And then I am going to poke out all the little bits that kind of create the interest between those trees, even though they're all one layer. And I am going to layer these up. So that kind of gives me the dimension that I want. And I had so much fun with these cards. I don't know. You guys tell me your thoughts. Was this something you would recreate? What would you have done differently if you were creating these cards? Because they're very whimsical, and I love them for that. And I love vibrant colors. So these, of course, just make me really happy. And I get to bust out my holographic stars for embellishment at the end of these cards, which also make me really happy. So this card set is just like happiness for me. Obviously, it's not to everybody's taste, and that's perfectly okay. You know, that's, you know, how we do in life, but I had a lot of fun making them. So I'm going to do the tape reveal here. I thought you guys might enjoy this, so I left this in for you. And I have had a bunch of tips and tricks from you guys multiple times now about peeling the tape. So I have had a couple. Some people have said heat the tape. I did that. I made sure this was completely dry, heated it with my embossing tool even to make sure these were completely dry before I lifted off the tape so the tape got warm, and to fold it back on itself and go kind of slowly. My clips are all sped up, otherwise you guys would be here for a lot longer than this video, and this video is already a bit longer. So I did all of those tips, and it mostly worked. You can see that very, very little paper ends up coming off. The only exception is when I do this last piece, and it's probably because it was under the other pieces, so it didn't get warmed up as much. You can see that it did rip a little bit of the 2 bottom corners, and it's going to do the same on the top. I don't know how we could have really done anything about that. Like, I can't heat it forever. It starts to warp the paper. So it's one of those things where, you know, it's a little bit of a learning curve here. It ripped a bit of that corner as well. You can't see it. Like on the paper, you can't really tell. I know because I saw it happen, and you guys know because I've told you. But I don't know what else we could have done to try to fix that, because I tried, you know, multiple of your tips, and they did work for the most part. Obviously, I could use a lower tack tape as well, but I needed the thickness of this one. So we'll keep practicing. It'll be okay. I don't think you can really tell when you look at the actual paper itself. So not a big deal, but one of those learning experiences. So I'm going to lay down my trees. I started with the 2 trees I wanted in the back. So they're higher on the panel. That's why you can still see white at the bottom. And then I am going to cut off the excess that's sitting out so that I don't have to cut through multiple layers when I lay this larger set of trees. But here you can see you're only going to get like half of the actual trees on the card. So there was no point in cutting the whole bottom of it. And I'm going to make sure that they cover the white of the bottom of the card, because I want the frame around the watercolor, but I want the trees to kind of go outside of it a little. I just like that look. Totally a personal preference. You do what makes you happy, but I just thought that looked really neat. So that's kind of what I ended up doing there. And then with this one, I actually lowered it a little bit more. So I'm going to end up trimming more of this one off as well. So it's just one of those things where it's kind of wherever I think the trees look the best, but there's no rhyme or reason here. It's just personal preference ultimately, when I lined them up, how I liked them sitting, because I did move the larger trees, or the two trees, to either side, kind of making it so they look a little different. I don't want them to look the exact same. And a little bit of my stars did come off on my trimmer. I just wiped them off. It's not a big deal. You could, wait longer. I get impatient because I sit down and create a card generally in one sitting. It might take me all day depending on what kind of thing I'm creating, but I tend to sit down and make it start to finish in one sitting or one day. So with that, I kind of, it's one of those things where it's like, okay, let's sit down and do all of this. So I get impatient when I'm waiting for things to dry. So here's where I brought in that little bit of, this is very watered down white gouache, because I wanted the center to be a little bit brighter. And I honestly, like I said, I wish I had done this, while I was painting the background, so that the trees, it could have gone behind the trees nicely. I couldn't do that because I didn't think about it until right now, but I think that it does add just a little bit of interest. And thankfully, because it's watered down so much, it does blend in a lot with the color behind it. So I'm not too concerned, about it being too white, because I want the stars to still be the whitest part. But this just adds, a little bit more of that kind of magical whimsy in the background. And I think it looks really fun. But you guys will have to tell me your thoughts, as always. It's one of those things where I can create something sometimes and I'm like, oh, I don't know if I like that. And then I create something sometimes and I'm like, oh, that's so cool. So it's really dependent. I brought out a sentiment from... This is from the Tim Holtz Stamptember 2023 set. It just had this believe in the magic of Christmas. And I felt like these were they're not specifically Christmas-y necessarily, but I do feel like they work for a Christmas, a non-traditional Christmas card, I guess they're more wintry than Christmassy necessarily. But I like this sentiment. I thought it was a lot of fun. Obviously you can't get this stamp set at this time because it would have been, a couple of years ago's Stamptember release, but any of his, Christmas sentiments would work really fun here. I just stamped it in Pigment ink. This is a white ink. It's the unicorn ink from Hero Arts, I believe. Yeah, it is. And I just stamped it out in that twice with my Misti so that I could, make sure that it was bright white and would read well. And then I'm going to adhere them down onto their base. Now I did have a bit of warping in the cardstock, so I'm going to sit them under my Misti to make sure that everything adheres properly, because the watercolor cardstock is a bit warped and it didn't really want to lay down. You can now see Aqua's foot in the corner there. You saw her brother walking through a bit earlier. Now you can see that she's got her foot in the screen there. I just thought that was so cute. They like to lay above my my glass mat on the desk when I create, and it's always just so fun to have them there. And then of course we're going to adhere to the base. I am going to bring out the Tim Holtz Tree Line stamps, and I'm going to stamp 2 trees on the inside of the base as well. I'm not going to show you guys. I'll show you at the end when I show you a close-up, but just keep in mind that I did do that, and that just added a little bit of that same, they're just flat black. I didn't add anything to them. I just thought that it was kind of a fun way to decorate up the inside so that there was a little something in there, so that was kind of fun. And then that's kind of the whole card. I'm going to show you that highlight thing now though. So I'm pretty sure I do it next. Yeah, I do. So I brought in a white gel pen and I kind of just added sketchy lines. Now this isn't, accurate. We're not working with a specific light source here where, like the light is here, so this is how your trees would sit. I'm not worried about that. I'm more worried about helping the trees separate themselves from each other, because we have a whole bunch of black ones just sitting on top of each other. And you're going to see what I mean here in a moment. So I'm adding sketchy lines. There's no rhyme or reason. honestly, it's just what I want to stand up better from the background. That's what I'm thinking, not anything else. You can choose to do a white source if you want to. I wasn't concerned about it, honestly. I just want them to stand out better from the background because the background is also fairly dark. So this just kind of helps them pop against it. And I'll show you in a second. I'm going to hold up the two so you can see the difference between one that has the kind of sketchy highlights and one that doesn't, and decide if you like it or not, because this is a step you could skip if it wasn't to your taste, so I just want to show you options for what might be, helpful or not. So I like the white sketchy line, so of course I did it on the other side as well. And then now I'm going to bring in these really fun holographic stars. These are my favorite embellishment besides pearls. I have so much fun with these. Any excuse to bust them out on a card design is, right there. I've had them in my stash for a long time. They're like the never-ending gumdrop here because there's so many in the container. They do sometimes go out of stock. I always link them. They're from Simon Says Stamp. I haven't seen them anywhere else. There are other companies that do different version, but the one that I have specifically, I got from Simon, a couple years ago. And so I always link to them, but sometimes they go out of stock. So it's one of those ones you have to watch. Like I had to watch it when I found them. I think I saw Amy R use them in a video years ago, and then I had to wait. I think it was like 6 months before I actually was able to get my hands on them. They're so worth it if you love embellishments. They're so pretty in person. Like the video doesn't even do them justice. Like they are stunning. So keep that in mind. If you like that kind of embellishment, make sure you get them in your hand because they are beautiful. And yeah, so that's kind of the card design. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I hope you'll, leave me a comment and tell me your thoughts on these cards. I think they turned out really fun, really whimsical, kind of different. Because you guys know I try to make my Christmas cards really interesting. I do a lot of snowflakes. I'm the first guy to admit that. But I do try to give you some different versions of Christmas cards if you and this one's not super simple to recreate, but I think it would be really special for someone that, you really like and want to give them a special card. So definitely keep that in mind. So that's what I have for you. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you leave me a like, leave me a comment, and consider subscribing if you haven't already. I do new videos every Monday and Thursday. And like I said, we are in the middle of the 12 weeks of Christmas, which is really exciting. So thank you guys so much. And I will see you again very soon. Bye-bye for now.